Terrific. Oh, it's great to see faces whose stories are such a beautiful addition to this issue. So let's start. I'm sure there'll be a few more who join us as they go through the Zoom registration, as I'm sure many of you had. Kai, I'm speaking to you from Naarm, Melbourne, whose traditional custodians are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to the ancestors of the lands where you come from. In Australia, we've learnt recently about the First Nations manner of conducting ceremony, particularly the Welcome to Country, which involves smoke. And it's this engagement of senses which is so important in bringing us together. And we'll have an opportunity to explore a kind of sensorium soon, once we hear from those who are making tribute to Rudy Ghaznavi, who this issue is dedicated to. But I'd just like to note that there's been the passing of two quite unique voices from Garland. That is the very legendary craft writer, Jasleen Damager, and the epitome of Zen thinking in Australia, Ross Gibson. And we'll have opportunities to mark their work in the future. But for the moment, I'd like to invite Saiful Islam, who has written a beautiful tribute to Rudy Ghaznavi for our issue. And his memory of Rudy Ghaznavi tells of a very effective, if quite unassuming, leader of Bangladeshi society, particularly in the promotion of natural dyes and the tireless work that she's done for the World Crafts Council. So, Saiful, please, we look forward to your thoughts about Rudy Ghaznavi.
Thank you, Kevin, and hello, everybody. And again, a big thanks to you, Kevin, for reaching out across, I would say, many seas and a couple of oceans for this particular occasion to organize the memorial session on Ruby Ghaznavi. I'm going to refer to her as Ruby Appa. Appa in Bangla means elder sister and is said with a mixture of affection and respect. So first of all, my love and sympathy, including my wife's, who also knew Ruby Appa, towards her family, especially the children, especially Farah, looked after both parents with such a huge devotion till the end. And Farhad Bhai, Bhai means elder brother or brother, her husband, who also looked after her while he was still able to, but unfortunately, was an untimely demise about 6 weeks before Ruby Appa. It's a bit of a cliche to say it only seems like Ruby Appa has passed away yesterday, but the 14th of January does seem to be when time stopped and particular, I think, post sorrow has engulfed us. Since then, I have written a brief piece. Many have written, many have spoken, and I believe that everybody has made unique contribution and insights into Ruby Appa's life, her work, and her dedication to crafts at both the national level, individual level, with organizations, with artisans, with weavers. She began as a teacher, but then moved into the sphere of crafts after our nation became independent in 1971, when she realized that, I think, firstly, being a student of economics, that craft was and could be a source of income. And secondly, being a patriot, I think she realized the importance of craft as a source of identity too. She revolutionized particularly the organic dye industry, organic dyes, which have been used in our part of the world and perhaps in many parts of the world for a very, very long time, had completely been eradicated from even the subcontinent, I would say. But she brought scholarship, she brought recognition to it. She also unhesitatingly taught people about it. She also put her energy into the recognition of Jamdani, which perhaps some of you have heard of before, is a very unique handloom cotton cloth woven in a particular motifs. And this Jamdani, which is our national textile, she dedicated herself to promoting it, along with many other indigenous crafts and individual artisans. This included working for deprived women, working for students. This included working for shelterless people also. But beneath all that work that she did, what she remained to me is like a role model of creativity and rectitude. She would always unhesitatingly praise others, but unhesitatingly cut you short if you started to praise her work with saying that there's still a lot to be done. I think her foremost love was for telling the truth about her country and a very strict idealism and a very clear identity about who we were, what we're capable of, and how to build upon our strengths. I think her greatest feature was in telling it as it is, in calling what we say a spade, and never drifting it into a shovel. She never embellished a story. She never gave credit if it was not due, but at the same time watched in quiet approval every effort, whether it was small or big, encouraging any idea that moved us forward, welcoming professionals and at the same time new entrants. And I was a new entrant. I came up with the initiative of trying to revive muslin in 2013. I went to her office through a contact, having known of her, but knowing that she was always short of time and she could be very, very perceptive in how committed you were. And she welcomed me. And that welcome extended over the next 9 years. And as a complete outsider to fabrics, and she gave me a long list of friends in the craft industry. She gave me a shorter list of material to read because there wasn't a huge amount of material in Bangla, but I drifted into other languages also later on. And she also told me of places that I should see. It didn't mean that she wouldn't grill me, but somehow the feeling of being an understudy to her never left me. But that was because I looked up at her as both an umbrella and I suppose as a beacon. And she moved forward with our project. And initially, our idea was to do an exhibition on muslin, but later I decided that we needed to give a voice to our history. And therefore, I told her that I was thinking of writing a book. And she turned to me and said, I thought you had already started. There isn't much time. And that's how she was. And every time, even after the exhibition, she had my book and she had seen all the work that we do. And I came up with other ideas on culture, whether we could have a historical trust for the places and spaces in Bangladesh, whether we could explore other artists who had made contributions. And every time she would say, sure, let's talk about it, and would personally commit herself to it. This, along with the hospitality of her three offices, where she would give her time, Orono, that she later on passed over to another organization, and then her own brother's trust, which she had established, in which she had donated an entire mathematics faculty to the University of Dhaka. As a matter of fact, my film, Legend of the Loom, was shown at the mathematics faculty, and I said to her, do you think that's the right place? And she said, yes, of course, there is science and crafts too. So there was a turnout of about 300 mathematics students, full of binomial theorems and so on, who watched, how Jamdani is put together, which is also a pretty exact science. So while all this was happening, her health did continue to weaken. And there were times when, a call would be returned after perhaps a month instead of hours or minutes as it was before. But she continued to, with the last energy that she had, continued to focus upon the work that was in front of us. And I think she was a product of excellent schooling. She studied in Loreto, which was in India. She had very strong values. Her family was very reputed. Her sisters, her brother, all accomplished in their own fields. I won't go into that, but her sister established one of the, I think, probably the very first female organization to run villages in Bangladesh. Over there, brother was a very well-known, large accountancy firm based in the UK, and she had a very transparent determination along with a dislike for self-promotion and almost a lasting love to quietly leave behind more than what she ever found. And I think she leaves us with an image. I think she leaves us with an example, and she leaves us with a question: the question of who takes these legacies forward. They do deserve our effort, our answer, and I hope we can get someone with the commitment, with the tough love, with the creativity, and the energy that Ruby Appa showed us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Saiful, for that really inspiring picture of Ruby Ghaznavi. And we're privileged to have now a brief statement of thanks from Ruby's daughter, Farah Ghaznavi, who has been racing back from a literary festival in Dhaka, and as she expected, was stuck in traffic. And I think she might be here, but she has given us a video just in case, which we can listen to now. Sorry, I'll just have to start that again with the sound. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Kevin, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this memorial for my mother, Ruby Ghaznavi. And a very sincere thanks also to Saif on behalf of my family for his lovely tribute. When I was a student at the London School of Economics, I often found it hard to give a coherent response when any of my newfound friends asked me what my mother did. I would tell them that she was a development worker, an author, a feminist, an environmental activist, a craft expert, and so on, until they began to look at me somewhat suspiciously. "She sounds like Superwoman," one of them said, with a tinge of sarcasm. "I suppose she does," I conceded, without any sarcasm whatsoever. After my friend had met my parents several times, she agreed that I had not oversold my mother's abilities. "It must be hard to be her daughter," she commiserated. "She'd be a tough act to follow." When I told my mother this, she was genuinely shocked. I said, "Don't worry, I know that some people might expect me to be neurotic about your success, but actually I'm very proud of you." And I always have been. I have never forgotten the realization I had that day that my mother actually had no idea just how special she was. If you had ever asked her, she might have described herself as hardworking or competent, but never creative, let alone gifted, which she most definitely was. I think it's because for her, it was always about getting the job done and contributing to a greater cause. And because she never engaged in petty games of one-upmanship or even fought to take the credit that was due to her, in the last couple of years she became increasingly worried that her contributions would be diminished over time or forgotten altogether. I very much hope that events like this will ensure that that doesn't happen. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for helping to keep her legacy alive in the years to come.
Thank you very much, Farah, for that, and I'm pleased that you could join us for this. And thanks again, Saiful, for that tribute. And I also invite you to visit the well, which is the feature in our Garden of Stories that contains all the articles related to natural dyes. So you can see the richness of work being done in this particular field. Now we come to the brief sensorium, and hopefully you will have received a message about bringing a raisin and a lemon. And if not, maybe you could duck out and find one. But otherwise, you're welcome to join us for this brief moment of silence. The Sensorium series, as you know, is sort of premised on the idea of breaking out from the confinement of COVID. And it would seem a little sad if we just went back to Zoom as it was normally for this, when it only engages such a limited part of our senses. So I invite you to spend a minute on mute with your video on, just to listen to the sounds around you, to be present to where you are, but also to know that you're in the presence of people from many different countries of the world, to put a raisin in your mouth, to savor the different flavors that it will generate, and to scratch the surface of a lemon to create a puff of fragrance that will tell you about the citrus and acid that's contained within, while also feeling the dimpled surface of the skin. So Liliana Morai, the guest editor, has agreed to be the timekeeper for this. So if you'd like to start the minute, we can begin. Thank you.
One minute is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. The longest minute in history. I hope you enjoy that and feel grounded before we begin hearing from the contributors to this issue. So I'd like to start with Liliana, who, sorry, I just finished the raisin, is
Thank
the
you, Karen.
guest editor, who is also a Garland perennial, somebody who contributes regularly to the magazine and has shown a terrific insight into particularly the Lusophone Japanese connection, which you see reflected in so many of the very interesting articles in this particular issue. So she brings a fresh set of ideas and knowledge to the question of taste and the craft of taste. And I'd like to invite you, Liliana, to share with us your thoughts about this issue.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you there. Some faces I know as well. First of all, I want to thank Kevin for inviting me to co-edit this issue with him. I have to say that most of the articles featured were through Kevin's own doing, with my contribution being limited to a handful of articles from contributors from around the world, but with a strong presence of the three countries that I have experienced more deeply in my life, which are Portugal, Brazil, and Japan. And so accordingly, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of the makers and storytellers who sent their valuable and often delicious contributions to this taste issue, which would obviously not exist without them. So just to give you a background on this issue, it is part of the new Sensorium series of Garland. So it is the first issue of the series that will continue exploring the non-visual senses throughout 2023. And this, the idea behind this new Sensorium series emerged from a desire to celebrate the beauty of the handmade beyond the traditional art historical focus on sight. And this visual bias, as we know, has often contributed to put craft in kind of an inferior position in relation to the visual arts or the fine arts, particularly in the modern West, or also a need and a push for craft to conform to the same criteria by which the visual arts are appreciated and valued. And instead, in this Sensorium series, we locate the power and appeal of craft in its multisensorial dimension, by which the aesthetic experience, our perception, and also enjoyment are made through the various senses, one of them being taste. I also think that multisensory experience that craft provides adds to the sense of intimacy that we have with the objects that surround and take parts in our everyday lives, both on ordinary and special occasions. And an example of this intimate role of handmade objects in our lives can be seen in the commonplace or festive acts of eating and drinking, which often involve various sociability rituals. So in this issue, you will find articles that explore the role of craft in adding to the experience of tasting foods and beverages, such as articles focusing on tableware or on collaborations between makers and chefs. And on these occasions, craft not only adds to the overall experience of consumption and enjoyment, but craft objects themselves can also be experienced through the sense of taste, as one of our contributors, Anna Sinku's curry spoons, will demonstrate. So another aspect of craft relates to its understanding, not only as a physical and permanent type of object, but also as a process that is characterized by a deep exploration of the character of materials, or in the case of food and drink, the character of the ingredients. So the maker or the cook can act as a type of mediator or facilitator, as another contributor put it, Erika Kobayashi. And so the cook or the maker's job would be to bring out the best characteristics of the materials with the conditions at hand. Therefore, in this issue, you will also find several recipes that provide a sensory and mouth-watering experience. Finally, craft and making can function as tools to effectively and sensorially connect with the past, with one's ancestral histories and heritage, particularly for diasporic and indigenous communities, as well as connect us with our surrounding environment and contribute to imagining a future together on this planet. So this role of craft in remaking the world through creativity and imagination seems particularly important in our current situation of climate disasters and biodiversity loss. For this issue, we also added a new section titled Tastemakers, in which we introduced tableware created by selected makers that adds to the experience of cooking, eating, and drinking. And there you can find photos of craft objects presented in their functional role and natural setting. And although we are limited by the possibilities of the internet and Zoom in particular as tools that privilege the visual, I hope this taste issue will feed your imagination and heighten all of your senses. Thank you.
Obrigado. Thank you so much, Liliana, for that overview. And now we have a chance to hear from some of the contributors who are present. We'll go through roughly in order of the contents to see how they represent practices that put a brake on us to be able to slow down our senses to appreciate things. And very pleased to see Ewan Craig here. Ewan, would you like to talk about your beautiful article and beautiful work?
I think you're muted, Ewan. Okay.
All right, I might just stop this because I think it's set for video. So I'm going to take off that and go back here. See how that works. Yep. Ewan.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in both the magazine and this launch meeting. Food and flavour are very important to me as a maker of functional items. And every part of my practice, from the wedging of clay through the firing of the pots, is aimed towards helping people to enjoy the tactile and sensory part of the world. Because I feel that nature is beautiful without human interference. And we are part of that experience, and that our skin is not a barrier, but an interface with nature. And when I'm making my pots, when I'm interacting with the clay, it's the nature of the clay and the nature of the forces that are at work on it that I'm interacting with that create the story that is the pot. The pot tells the story of how I feel, but also all of the elements that have gone into creating it. The nature of the clay, the qualities of tactile and sensory parts of the clay. The fire, the interaction of the flame with the wood and the ash. And then taking that to the table through the user, which is in two steps: the user who uses the pots to serve the food and the user who uses the vessels to eat the food. It's all part of a conversation. And the pots that I make tell a story, but the story becomes a conversation when somebody else adds their voice to it. So I was on to be able to tell the story, not only of my making, but also of a collaboration that I've been doing for 30 years with a gallery, Ebiyebujuts in Nihonbashi, which, as the article tells you, has been in business for 450 years this year. The current owner is the 9th generation, and it's a great honour for me to be participating in my exhibition again this year. And the chef, who has been working with me for 30 years, did the opening party food and for my first exhibition there. And we've done many collaborations ever since, and he has taught me so much about the texture and the qualities and the nature and the preparation of food. And as a father, making food myself for my family is a very big part of making the pots for me. So in November, I'm going to be able to have a collaboration dinner and exhibition to celebrate my 30th anniversary exhibition, the 160th anniversary of the restaurant, and the 450th anniversary of the gallery. And I look forward to sharing not only the work, but the flavours and the sensory delight that that interaction will give to the users. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Ewan. Well, that sounds like an amazing event, but thanks so much for your article, which certainly embodies the spirit of living craft, of Ikiteru Kogai, that is very much the underpinning of this issue. Now I'd like to call on Mia Riley. If you're there.
I'm here.
Good. You've got this beautiful story here to share with us about the Gaiwan, I think it's called.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you to Liliana and Kevin. Thank you for inviting me to write a story about something that's very dear to my heart. So my name is Mia Riley. My pronouns are she, her, and I am currently based in the Vancouver, Canada area, also the home of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And so, yeah, I decided to write the story, I think, like from a theme that's really important to my ceramic work, I think, as I take more time for myself as a maker and really want to like understand why I make ceramics. I have to admit, like, I'm not a very good scholar in some ways. I think I absorb like a lot of traditional and historical influences, but I think when, you know, I honestly want to say as I'm getting older, I'm more interested in my own life experience and trying to like interpret that through what I understand as a mixed race person. And so that's kind of where the birth of this story started. It's focuses on making a Gaiwan tea set that is kind of used in a variety of different contexts. Notably for me, I noticed it always being this fixture in my parents' china cabinet that was forever untouched. I think like a lot of people's experience of kind of various interesting ceramic objects. And so I, you know, as a ceramic artist, I kind of wanted to explore, you know, what these were used for, but I also wanted to know how, like, a part of my culture and my family. So making these objects was almost a process of asking my father to explain to me how they're used. And I think that was a really, you know, beautiful experience, thinking through a little bit of, you know, complex relationships that, you know, Asian diasporic children often face when trying to communicate things to their parents. And so it's all kind of wrapped up in this simple object. We often kind of show rather than say. And, you know, also part of that experience is, again, this relationship with food, with family life at home as well. So the tea that's drank in the Gaiwan is pu'er tea. And, you know, I think I really enjoyed going through this process to just remind myself of my relationship to those, the object, and also like the tea, and, you know, how I practice my daily life. I definitely have kind of a relationship with that tea that's passed down to me through my family. And I kind of enjoy the fact that it's more humble and kind of less pretentious sometimes. So you'll read about that in the story a little bit, but yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to write this. So thank you guys. And yeah.
Thanks, Mia.
Please, you're
Perfect
welcome.
story for this issue. And thank you. It must be very late then where you are in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for staying up
No
for
worries.
us. It's much appreciated. Anna, I believe it's Sinku. Is that how you say your name? We've got a few spoon articles, which are very interesting in this issue. Would you like to?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Good morning. It's early here, actually.
Where are you?
I'm in Portugal.
Oh.
Well, it's
Here.
7 a.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Liliana, for giving me the chance to share my story, or the story of this practice, which is actually a recent practice. But it's been kind of addictive, let's say, for the past 3 years, maybe 4, almost. Yeah, and it's why is it so addictive? Because I have some branches in my studio that people gave me, that I picked up in the woods, and it is really I really get curious to discover the natural grain, the natural colors of the wood. And yeah, from time to time, even if I have other things to do, I really get curious to open up a branch with the axe, right? And start carving it, because it's been really interesting to get in touch with the material and with the different sensory sorry. So yeah, it is it's been very a great pleasure to work with wood, and well, it is a way as well to connect with the places where I go, walking the dog, walking by myself, and yeah, it's a very slow working process. So in that way, I also can connect with myself by feeling myself, feeling the wood, and yeah, I guess we can read the rest.
A beautiful
you.
story, and thanks also on behalf of all the people who get such pleasure from the quite unique spoons that you make relating to the world around you. Obrigado. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there are also a few stories here about chopsticks, and I'd like to call on someone else who's been working with wood, and that is Vipun Chanchlani from Ballarat. Are you with us?
Yep. Technologies. Right. Hi, my name is Vipin, and I'm based in Ballarat. So my story, how it went about, is I'm a self-taught woodworker. And it started when COVID happened. So I started exploring various ways to work with timber. At the time, because of COVID, and people getting really sensitive about taking things or reusing things. So I thought about making my own chopsticks. And so I hand make all my chopsticks on that jig that you see there. And there was also a bit of an environmental consciousness that I had, that if we can carry our own chopsticks, which I do in the small bags like these, it would be good for the environment. And it's just something, for me at least, I think chopsticks are really personal items. It's like carrying a pen, a really high-end pen, that you want to sign your name with. So that was the idea of it. Making the chopsticks. The photo that you see there, there's a earlier was skateboards chopsticks. Skateboards became quite popular, and because of the different colors of timber in it. So I thought, why not experiment with skateboards, because they were all broken off skateboards. So yeah, that's a small story about how I came up with the chopsticks. It was yeah, and I was quite influenced by Japanese cartoons growing up, and I really wanted to eat the way they ate in those cartoons. And but because I grew up in India, I didn't have that. And when I moved to Australia, Melbourne, I was able to do it, but I didn't know how to use chopsticks. So I made my own to teach myself that. Yeah, and now I make it for other people in small restaurants here and there. But again, I like to push, if people can carry their own chopsticks, it can reduce the footprint that we're leaving, and using those bamboo chopsticks and just throwing them away. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I do.
Thank you so much, Vipin. We've had a few articles about chopsticks before, particularly the Korean chopstick, which is, of course, a metal one. But yours goes into a lot of detail about things like taper and the texture of the chopstick to be able to hold food. And so I think the way you come to it fresh is very useful in this article. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to call on Divya for this very intriguing story about the herb that must not be named. Divya, would you like to tell us about this story?
Hi, I hope all of you can see and hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, some issues with my internet connection. Hi, thank you, Kevin, for inviting me, and thank you all for being, a part of this session. So I'm a fashion designer by qualification, but I've done many things in my career as a designer. I'm a design educator who teaches fashion communication now. But I primarily make jewelry. So there itself, you have three things going on. And when I heard about this issue for the first time and I read the brief, I thought, okay, we talk about jewelry in terms of sight, in terms of sound, sometimes even, the tactility is there. But can we talk about jewelry in terms of taste? So I was immediately reminded of the teething bracelets that we use in India, which is made up of this herb called vasambar. And there's something interesting about that herb is that if you go to a shop, a traditional medicine shop, and ask for a herb that must not be named, they will actually give it to you. They won't ask you for an explanation. So that really made me curious, and I started to research around what this herb is, what it means to wear it. And, the Western world sees the herb very differently. They see it as toxic. So what is the kind of, understanding that we have in Indian medicine versus what is there in the Western world? I have to confess that I'm not a medical practitioner, so I'm not writing any of this from a medical point of view, but I'm writing this solely from a cultural point of view about the things that I have heard and I have seen, I have experienced growing up as a Tamil woman in India. So this whole article is about this particular herb, how it is used in jewelry and the belief systems that are surrounding it. And, there's also like a little translation of a little poem on how to make this kind of traditional medicine. I hope to hear from you on what you think about it. And it's been a fantastic experience going into something that I've only heard from and known from in terms of knowledge from my family members, and then putting it in sort of an academic writing. So thank you for this opportunity, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Divya. Your article is certainly a revelation and much appreciated. And now we go to Ilka White. And I must admit that it was a conversation with Ilka a few years ago, which certainly pricked my ears and taste buds about how being a weaver and seeing that what she cooks is very much as much part of her practice as the actual weaving in terms of her idea of a maker. So now she's come up with the goods, which is a series of a recipe for us, which is much appreciated. Would you like to tell us about this, Ilka?
Thanks, Kevin. Sure. I guess when we speak about our practice, I think for me in the last little while, it's a funny concept because my making's been merging with the rest of my life for a long time, and I struggle with the even wondering what craft is and what its purpose is. And I guess this article speaks about, for me, craft is more closely aligned to provisioning, to making for myself what I need to live well and to live respectfully and in a good relationship with place. So this article is talking about my local place and what I have made from it, what from the earth under my feet, literally, what grows here. And I guess I realized on this, with the invitation to contribute, that I forage a lot of my fibers at the moment, and I've been foraging food also for the last few years, particularly inspired by the lockdowns, which invited us into our neighborhoods in a deeper way than ever before. So this article really just recognizes a parallel, I guess, between foraging for food and foraging for fiber, and making what we need to sustain ourselves, either our bodies or our spirits, or our, I guess, being a weaver, clothing ourselves, for me, but also beyond the bodily need, just the spirit also needs beauty and ingenuity and connection to place, and cooking, foraging and making food and sharing it has been a big part of that for me. So I hope you enjoy the article.
Thank you so much, Ilka. While you're there, what does the bunya taste like? This is a very distinctive indigenous, you could call it a cone nut.
Yeah, well, it tastes different depending on when you eat it and how you prepare it. But the bunya pine, as you barely see really on the screen there, but the cones are larger than our heads. They're very heavy, and trees around this area are often roped off when the tree is fruiting, because there's a fear that a fruit will drop and kill someone. So they're really dangerous if you're underneath a bunya pine tree in fruiting season. They only fruit every 3 years or so, and not even strictly that. So we had fruit in 2020 and we hope to have some this year, but we don't know. They taste, well, at the moment I've saved bunya seed, and so I'm still eating it dried in its shell from 2020. And it tastes like a musty, no, not musty is not the right word, musky kind of powdery meal, I guess. Yeah, a nutty, as you would expect, but unlike other nuts, not as oily as a pine nut, the Chinese pine nuts that we cook with. But yeah,
Well, when you open your restaurant,
earthy.
when you open your restaurant, invite us around. But certainly learning how to work with the material is a clear transfer of craft sensibility from making objects or weaving to cooking. So thank you so much, Ilka. And now we go back to...
Gary filled in a lovely explanation in the chat. I think a bit like a chestnut. That's true.
Right. Okay. Now we go back to Liliana, if you'd like to join us again and tell us about this remarkable performance.
Hello again.
Kobayashi.
Unfortunately, it seems that Erika could not join us for the moment, but Erika is a longtime friend. She is a tea ceremony practitioner based in Brazil. She's of Japanese heritage, and she uses the tea, both the practice of the tea ceremony as a kind of performance, and more recently also the practice of tea cultivation, which she also finds a lot of parallels. She uses that to connect with her heritage, to connect with herself, with her body, with her experience, with her perception. And so I explore a little bit of her trajectory and how she brings the best of the materials with what she has at hand, particularly with using Brazilian ingredients, Brazilian objects, including also objects from Portugal, where she has partaken in tea cultivation every year. And so she brings a new and kind of recreation to the very traditional and often very rigid tradition of the tea ceremony, and opens up her practice also outside of the tea house, outside of the tea room, bringing tea and bringing presence and being in the moment and one-time encounters to the public streets of Brazil, but also Portugal, Iceland, Australia, and other places where she has performed her, as she calls it, tea in performance. So I would love that you would take time to read about Erika Kobayashi's work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liliana. And it's a terrific story of the East going south, of Japanese culture going into the Southern Hemisphere, into Brazil, which we experience in other countries of the South as well. Back to Japan, it's my great pleasure to now introduce Daniela Kaito, who has written an extraordinary story about a foraging community that she's part of. Daniela, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to, hello everyone, and I'd like to express my gratitude to Kevin and Liana for their curation and editorship of this truly wonderful feast of stories of making and tasting. I live in Japan, but I'm currently in my original home in Portugal. I'm in lovely Sintra, where I'm offering a workshop, and I apologize if there's any background noise. I'm in a hotel lobby so as not to disturb my roommate. So there's a little bit of background noise. Well, 2 years ago, after I moved from charismatic Kyoto to a small depopulated village in Yamanashi, I found myself beset by a sense of scarcity and also despondency at what seemed to me a daunting task ahead of me, restoring and bringing back to its former agrarian splendor a piece of abandoned land at the edge of a forest. And the task of getting rid of weeds and wild plants in particular seemed especially exhausting, as I knew very few people in the aging community who could lend me a hand. And I completed all manner of permaculture design courses, but the idea of kind of imposing a design on something that seemed so intractable and unmanageable just didn't seem right, just didn't gel with me. But then when I was considering giving up, I found a small community of people congregating at a charming and unusually laid-back Kominka cafe. And these people seemed determined to restore a sense of a handmade, slow life of taste and texture, rooted in the rhythms of the local ecology with its changeable weather and seasons. And to my immense relief, they didn't seem at all keen on the multiple toils involved in wet rice farming, which is still the dominant form of relationship with the land in rural Yamanashi and in rural Japan at large. Instead, they were into foraging for, crafting, and eating wild vegetables, so-called sansai in Japanese, at a totally relaxed, improvisational pace that wholly responded to the seasons and the vagaries of the weather. And when I began joining them and discovering the pleasures of foraging for small, unassuming plants that generously jumped into our hands without us having to toil or worry over them, a whole new, abundant world of color, shape, texture, aroma, and yes, taste opened up for me. And this discovery has made me realize that at these times of enormous change and uncertainty, including tremendous environmental degradation, perhaps we need to rethink our notions of what abundance may feel and taste like in collaboration, not in competition with plants and other living beings around us. Perhaps we need to rethink our domesticating kind of top-down designs, kind of lower our gaze and pay more attention to what is quietly growing, unassisted and unimposing on roadsides and at the edges and seams of our farmed fields. So my article doesn't have any overarching agenda nor propose any solutions to what often feel like overwhelming, kind of intractable, large-scale problems. Instead, it's a very personal and poetic, small-scale exploration of the multisensory possibilities of this alternative way of relating to the land beyond the visual and the domesticated. Thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy the reading. Thank you.
Obrigado. Thank you so much, Daniela. And it's terrific the way your piece is not just based in nature, but also this particular community that you're connected with that has this knowledge. Thank you for sharing it with us. I'd like to go back now to Cone 11. Now, it's about the work of a workshop that takes commissions for some of the specialist chefs in Melbourne. And I just wondered Alona, if you're here, if you would be interested in just saying a little about the experience of working with these chefs. Are you there, Alona?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good, I'll get you up. There we go. Greetings.
Hello, my name's Ilona. So I'm one half of Cone 11 Ceramics. The other half is my husband, Colin, who's actually cooking my dinner at the moment. So we're based at the Abbotsford Convent, which is an old convent that's been converted into an arts precinct. And very early on, we started to do restaurant commissions. We started our very first commission just basically came out of the blue for the restaurant at the Gallery of Modern Art in Queensland. So we started big, and that really set me down the path quite early of working directly with chefs to make bespoke tableware specifically for restaurants, so that the conditions in a restaurant as opposed to for home use are very different. And that was about 12 years ago. And so the last 12 years have really been about learning and narrowing down that process of understanding what a chef wants. And developing ways to work with them, I suppose. I am a bit of a problem solver, so the best part for me is understanding what the chef has and what's wrong with the tableware that they have. And it really often comes down to the types of meals and the setting of the restaurant. It's not just about the food, it's about the whole experience of how they dine. And I may have mentioned that in the article. And the other part is about what is wrong with the tableware that they have, and what is it that they want it to do. So the way we approach the tableware and the making of the tableware is we're almost kind of creating a frame for the food. And I've heard other potters say who specialise in restaurant commissions say the same thing. What we're creating is a frame for this food. It's like good lighting or a great soundtrack in a film. It's a supporting act. So that's been the main the main kind of part of my work for the last 12-ish years. But what I found over the last 4 years was that we were getting approached by quite large hotels, Ritz-Carlton, and they were wanting really big commissions, 200, 300 pieces. And so we actually started to work with Bendigo Pottery. And I know Ewan got his start at Bendigo Pottery when he was based in Melbourne many a year ago. Bendigo Pottery, for those that don't know, is Australia's oldest and longest running pottery. And so we actually started to work with them to create Australian-made tableware so it wasn't a handcrafted, the whole process wasn't handcrafted. There was lots of handling and crafting of the work along the way. So that's in the article, I kind of talk about that. So that's the Good Plate project. And so a small amount of money from each plate sold gets donated to a charity that helped people through food. The idea was that it wasn't just about filling a hole in the marketplace, it was giving back to the hospitality community that had supported my craft through all of those years. And so that's that Good Plate project that gets mentioned. My favorite commissions are the ones that, there are two really good ones that I talk about. The Brulee Cup. So Zach, I've been working with basically since he was an apprentice chef. And every now and again he comes to me, and the process is slow, unfortunately. Often we're busy, but in this particular one, this was a really good example of him knowing what he wanted, but actually not being able to communicate with me. And so he actually came to me saying that he wanted a white, wide, flat dish. And I just said to him, I don't think that's really going to work. And I made a prototype for him. And when he saw it, he just realized, actually, no, you're right. That's a really terrible idea. And so we ended up with actually quite a narrow, beautiful kind of blue, dusty blue glaze that contrasts really nicely with the creme brulee. The next one down from that is, this is a tiki cup. Well, it's not a tiki cup. It was based on the idea of a tiki cup. This is for a bar who make the most amazing cocktails. They've got a drinks lab. Every season they change their drinks. And I've worked with him a couple of times making various things, but this drink is called a tropical fuck storm. I'm sorry for it's based on a Melbourne, the name is based on a Melbourne band, that it was all about the summer vibe. And so he wanted the idea of a tiki cup, but he wanted an Australian version of a tiki cup. And if anyone has spent any time in Australia, you'll know that we're lazy and we're slouches and we're slurrers. And so this cup was really about kind of representing the Australian version of a summer with some Australian tones. So a lot of all the cups are different. They're all extruded and they're lazy and they slouch. So each commission that we approach, it's really about talking about the experience and the story that chef's trying to tell, as well as trying to make it functional and stand up to restaurant conditions, which in Australia particularly are quite harsh. But yeah, that's us. Thanks, Kev. Thank you for asking me to be involved with the project.
Thank you so much, Ilona. And the article certainly tells of the quite remarkable creative dialogue that occurs between a ceramicist and a chef, which I would have had no idea of. So it's quite unique. Now I'd like to go to Ben Linnell, who has written a piece which is quite challenging for this issue because it is about blending, tea blending. And Ben, would you like to tell us about this piece and your approach to it?
Sure. So my name is Ben Linnell. I go by he, his pronouns. I'm calling in from Montreuil in France. Been working in craft as a writer, curator, educator for the last 20 years. And recently started dedicating myself to cookware and ceramics. And I'm loving being part of the conversation today. I'm thanking you both, Kevin and Liliana, for making that possible. I feel that I'm meeting colleagues from all around the world, and that feels very special. So my contribution to the issue is an interview of Gina Zupsich. She's the art director of August Uncommon Teas. It's an American tea company which is based in LA. She's got a background in comparative literature. She got a PhD, then started to work in perfumes, and then sort of started working with her partner, Aaron, in this tea company. And the background is sort of interesting in the context of the work, because she comes to tea with a deep interest in transforming how tea is perceived, how tea consumption is perceived, especially in the US. In part of the interview, she describes how the Boston Tea Party and the subsequent sort of moment in American history has suppressed the consumption of tea and in favor of coffee and cocoa. And so she's interested in that history and how then that informs her client base. And she's interested in sort of developing both her own and her clients' connoisseurship. And one of the things that she does in the company, and one of the reasons I thought this would fit this issue of Garland, is that she's developed a tea tasting booklet that she provides her clients. And I see this, and the reason I think this is relevant to this group of humans sitting on this call, but also Garland's readers, is because I was seeing in Gina's sort of move to build a language for the taste that she's trying to create and to share that language with her clients, something that parallels the sort of work that craft advocates have been doing, I've been doing for the last few decades. A way to celebrate haptic knowledge, in this case, how we feel about what's in our mouth. And she's taking this very seriously, and I love how precise she is with language. In my short intro, I drew a parallel between what she does, again, with language and with her perception, trying to describe, and I'm going to quote from Michael Polanyi, we know more that we can tell, and I think she's in the business of trying to tell that story. And I drew a parallel with, for example, when I heard once Ezra Shales, the American scholar, try to find a particular quality in a Cherokee basket. And this was for me an example of a scholar in craft trying to develop a language that would be commensurate to what craft does. And he was describing this Cherokee basket and its huggability. And I think this is the connection that I think I can make, or is made in this article, between a practice of tea blending that parallels the sort of craft scholarship that we're all interested in, when it becomes about finding words that do justice to the practice that we're so invested in.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I think this perhaps sets a challenge for the series as a whole, to think about how we develop the language for talking about the different senses, and the practice of writers for applying their skills towards this. And thanks for starting that off, Ben. Now I'd like to go to Pamela C., who's a prodigious contributor to Garland, and she's here with the artist Jayanto Tan. Jayanto, would you like to join?
Sure. Yep. Thank you,
Pamela,
Kevin.
as well.
I thank you, Kevin, and Liliana, for having us in this issue, for having our interview. I'm just here today to introduce Jayanto, who's an esteemed colleague, a consummate ceramicist, and an absolutely, in my view, brilliant contemporary artist. He may be best recognized at the moment for his meticulous recreations of cuisine, from macaroons to finely sliced lotus root, using clay. And I think that he's an ascending voice in Australian art, speaking about issues of prejudice and inequity. But I think that we all want to hear from Jayanto himself. If you'd like to talk about your work, please. I have a few things to say at all.
All right. Thanks, Kevin, for inviting me. And also Pamela for contribute the my article. My work basically is respond to the I guess culture, deeply in culture, and also being a migrant in Australia. Most of the work is based on the family story, and also I fashion it with the gender's identity. So I guess I'd like to talk about this. I think this could be interesting. The Pandan Lamington. I did this work when I was in my master degree, and I'm looking something about story. What kind of story I want to bring to the Australian? But I don't want just my family story, but I want my story in it. So I'm thinking deeply about the food, the culture of the food, because the other level of story I can say, because of my family is a farmer background. So I'm thinking we got strangled a bit about the food stocking. So and also I want layering in as well about the history in Indonesia during why I come to Australia, because during that time is not 1908, it's got the problem with the well, not problem, challenge with the food taking. So bring that layers to my practice. So I was thinking myself, what is the iconic food in Australian? We're thinking about the lamington. So lamington basically is come from Queensland. That's another level of story, and they accidentally served for the governor because at the time they couldn't find anything to serve for the governor. Anyway, so come to my story. So I'm thinking about, well, vanilla flavored chocolate and vanilla, the lamington flavored chocolate and vanilla. So I'm thinking myself, I want to make something like different inside the lamington. So come up the idea of the pandan. The pandan leaf is a very common thing we use in Indonesia, particularly my family, because they grow easily. They grow in the backyard. We don't have to looking after it, and they grow just like maybe I can say like a wild. So we don't need the watering. We don't need anything. So mom loved to use the pandan flavor because in the village we can hardly find any like a vanilla flavor or any color thing. We don't have any because we live in a very removed village. Anyway, from there on, I'm thinking myself, all right, I'm gonna make a pandan lamington. So the first thing what I did was I make the ceramic work, and then I make the solid like a one block. And then I was thinking myself, oh, I want to see what is inside. So I tried to cut it up half of the lamington, telling me another layer of story. And then that the pandan lamington come up. And then I was thinking myself, well, you know, when you make a ceramic work, it's like still alive. So the idea of the Western world, but still alive, but something you can see, but you can taste. So then my previous project in the mainland regional gallery, I challenged myself to showing the original pandan lamington. So we're making the performers work based on the pandan lamington, telling the story. Why is pandan lamington? I think that's enough, Pamela.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit with Gianto's work is that everything that you're seeing on screen there, he's actually fashioned from clay. So it's absolutely amazing. And you've gone to the trouble at times to get different colors of clay before it's been fired to create these meticulous renditions. And what I love most about your work is that on one level, you're welcoming everybody living of all religions, all cultural backgrounds together with food, and not only ceramic versions of it, but real food in these amazing performances, events. And sometimes we come and we make food together to share, but also the people who have passed over. And I think that's a really important part in that you're looking at the spirits. So it's just a very a gentle way of bringing everybody together and introducing your cultural beliefs. And I think that's what I love most. And then if you have a chance to read the article, it's very personal and really I find affecting because you talked, Gianto, about processing grief, so loss of all kinds. I mean, even just merely coming to this country, and there's a level of, I think, displacement as well, let alone of people that you loved very dearly, physically not being with us now. And you've turned that into something truly beautiful through your craft and through food. So thank you. Is that's okay?
Thank you so much,
Pamela
Thank you. And Gianto.
Thank you, Kevin.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih
It's
sama-sama.
Really wonderful story that you share. Perfect. And for a historical reference, I thought we could go briefly to the story from Map Academy. Some of you might have been at the recent talk that they gave for us in the Reinventing the Wheel series, which looked at their use of the algorithm to explore the richness of collections of craft from around the world. And they've shared with us, as part of our partnership with Garland, something about the consumption of the betel nut. Would you like to say something briefly about that, Shivani Gandhi?
Sure. Hi, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for Map Academy to share their work on your platform. Niyati Dave is the author of the article, but unfortunately she couldn't join us today. So I'll just briefly talk about what the article covers, and then I hope everybody takes some time out to read it. So Pan has remained a fixture in the Indian subcontinent for millennia. It has been mentioned in Sanskrit texts, such as the Kama Sutra, where its qualities of aphrodisiac are extolled. Even in medieval recipe books, such as the Nimitnama, it mentions the health benefits of Pan. It's used in weddings, it's used in religious rituals. It's part of everyday Indian life. And so the article that we've written here shares the varied history of the humble betel leaf through going through beautiful objects such as boxes in which Pan is stored or represented to guests. Also looking at miniature paintings and how Pan and the ritual of eating Pan is represented in these different miniature paintings throughout, and other art forms like betel nut cutters. I hope that's
Yes, thank you so much, Shivani. We look forward to more richness from the MAP Academy as we go through the other senses. Much appreciated. And finally, I think we have Priyanka Kocha, who's shared with us a story which isn't directly about the sense of taste, but it's part of a general overview of world craft and the discovery that she's made, perhaps during lockdown, of artifacts that no longer have a use in India. Priyanka, greetings. Would you like to say something briefly about your story?
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin. So good to see you again after so many years. The last time we met in India, and now we're meeting on Zoom call. And thank you so much for this opportunity as well. Hello, everyone. I am a fashion writer.
I think you're breaking up a bit, Priyanka.
To things that my family has owned for.
I'm sorry, Priyanka, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Still not very clear. I think, thank you so much for coming, but we might conclude there and encourage people to read your article, your very personal article. Or can you say something now? Maybe you're back with us.
Yeah, so just a discovery of all of these things that already lay in my storeroom. And more than that, now since I look at the taste issue with the eco radio that you see, with the air purifier, with the lamp, and with the fan, all these gadgets that no longer exist because of all the technological advancements that we've done as a human race. But now when I look at the taste issue, and then when I go through all these articles that all the authors have written, I feel like all these are complementing to the food that we actually have. So when you're sitting to have food, or having a sensory experience, you will have a fan, you will have a light, you will have maybe some music on that's going on with your meal. So I think in a way it's just great to know how all of these things are sort of combined with what this issue is actually about. And I hope you guys enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing and contributing to the Garland magazine. Thank you so much, Kevin, and the team.
And thank you so much, Priyanka. I think that's everyone, unless I've missed someone. Let me know. But I think Priyanka is a very good way to conclude, because part of this series is very much about slowing down in different ways, slowing how we eat, how we listen, how we smell, how we touch, in order to connect more strongly to the world, which is both important in the short term in terms of coming out of COVID, but also in the longer term in terms of relationship to the environment and the impact we have on it. So finally, I'd like to invite you, although this is a more visual thing, but it's still a nice memory if we could have a Zoom shot, if you'd like to put your cameras on, so that